The war in Ukraine is often described as the first large-scale conflict between militaries equipped with truly modern arsenals. On both sides of the front line, forces are deploying advanced drones, layered air defense systems, satellite-guided munitions, and electronic warfare tools rooted in decades of Soviet and NATO research. It is a battlefield dense with sensors and precision strike capability. And yet, amid all this technological sophistication, one of the most consistently effective instruments in use is astonishingly simple. It is older than the Cold War. In fact, its origins trace back to the Second World War. The tool in question is the decoy, specifically, inflatable dummy weapons built to deceive the enemy. In 2025, inflatable tanks, rocket systems, and artillery replicas have become a meaningful component of Ukraine's defensive strategy. Their purpose is not symbolic. They are designed to lure Russian drones and missiles into wasting expensive munitions on targets that never existed. Over time, that deception may cost Moscow millions of dollars in squandered firepower each month. The basic idea would be instantly recognizable to a general from the 1930s. Yet in today's AI-assisted battlespace, these low-tech illusions are proving surprisingly resilient against some of the most sophisticated surveillance systems ever fielded. To understand why, it helps to look backward. In 1944, during Operation Fortitude, Allied planners orchestrated one of the most elaborate deception campaigns in military history. Inflatable tanks, wooden aircraft, and fabricated radio traffic were used to convince Nazi Germany that the D-Day landings would occur far from Normandy. The so-called Ghost Army employed visual trickery across multiple theaters, manipulating German reconnaissance and distorting strategic decision-making. At that time, deception only needed to fool distant observers and reconnaissance aircraft. Today's battlefield is saturated with drones capable of flying low, zooming in, and transmitting high-resolution video in real time. Intuitively, that level of visibility should render decoys ineffective. Instead, the opposite has happened. Modern drones have amplified the value of deception. A key figure behind Ukraine's inflatable arsenal is Viktor Talanov, an entrepreneur whose background was not in armored vehicles or missile systems, but in inflatable recreational equipment, sports installations, promotional structures, even children's play structures. That expertise translated unexpectedly well into constructing convincing replicas of Soviet-era tanks and Western-supplied systems. His products have reportedly been used not only by Ukrainian forces, but also referenced in Western training environments as examples of adaptive battlefield deception. Why do these decoys matter so much? The answer begins with availability. Ukraine inherited significant stocks of Soviet-era equipment after the collapse of the USSR. But years of intense combat have steadily reduced its inventory of operational tanks and armored vehicles. Replacing them is expensive and slow. In a drone-saturated war, armored vehicles are priority targets. Swarms of loitering munitions hunt them relentlessly. In that context, a decoy does not need to fight. It simply needs to exist convincingly enough to attract attention. An inflatable tank that costs a few $1,000s can draw a drone strike that might otherwise have targeted a real armored vehicle worth millions. Even without precise cost figures, the economic imbalance is obvious. A modern Western-supplied main battle tank can cost many millions of dollars. Rocket artillery systems such as HIMARS or tracked launchers like the M270 represent similarly high investments. Against that backdrop, a four-figure inflatable replica becomes a powerful financial weapon. Russia has repeatedly released drone footage claiming the destruction of valuable Ukrainian equipment. In some cases, independent analysts later determined that the destroyed systems were decoys. The explosions were real, the targets were not. Even when Russian forces recognize that they have struck a dummy, the damage is already done. Ammunition has been expended. Operational time has been consumed. And propaganda cycles have sometimes amplified the illusion before corrections emerge. The effectiveness of these decoys rests on uncertainty. As Talanov has explained in interviews, hesitation is itself a tactical outcome. When a drone operator spots a suspected tank, a split-second judgment must be made. Is it genuine? Should ammunition be used? Should additional reconnaissance be requested? That moment of doubt interrupts tempo. Across an 800-mile front line, such delays accumulate. Ukraine enhances the deception by moving decoys frequently, mirroring the mobility patterns of real units. Intelligence analysts tracking satellite images or drone feeds observe apparent repositioning consistent with normal military behavior. The decoys become part of the battlefield choreography. Deployment is quick. Many inflatable systems can be set up within minutes, minimizing exposure for personnel. Their portability allows them to be relocated repeatedly, complicating Russia's targeting process and reinforcing the illusion of active maneuver units. The engineering behind them is not as crude as it may sound. Some include embedded heat sources that replicate the infrared signature of an idling engine. Through thermal optics, they emit patterns resembling operational vehicles. In the compressed, high-stress environment of drone warfare, such signals can be enough to convince an operator that the target is authentic. Future versions may integrate even more elaborate features: simulated exhaust plumes, electronic emitters mimicking radio traffic, or radar-reflective components. At that point, distinguishing a decoy from a functioning system may require close physical inspection, something Russian forces are understandably reluctant to attempt in contested areas. Russia, for its part, has also used decoys. Inflatable aircraft have appeared at northern air bases, and dummy armored vehicles have been spotted within Ukraine. However, Western analysts often assess the Ukrainian implementations as more refined, both in detail and in the systematic integration into broader operational planning. But the true brilliance of Ukraine's approach lies beyond the inflatables themselves. Decoys are one piece of a larger ecosystem of cost-effective countermeasures designed to exhaust Russian resources. Consider fishing nets. Along sections of the front, Ukrainian units have strung nets across vulnerable positions to entangle incoming drones. It sounds almost absurd. Yet against certain fiber-optic guided drones, which cannot be jammed electronically because they rely on physical cables, nets can sever or trap the line, rendering the drone useless. Other countermeasures include simple FPV drones modified to intercept enemy drones mid-air. Some Ukrainian designs reportedly carry small firearms to shoot down hostile UAVs. Meanwhile, both sides rely on small arms and machine guns to engage low-flying drones. It is not elegant, but it is accessible and scalable. More improvised systems have also emerged. Multi-barrel anti-drone platforms mounted on vehicles create mobile gun arrays, capable of saturating the airspace with fire. Russia has fielded its own variants, mounting automatic weapons on light chassis for point defense. Armored vehicles have evolved too. Additional metal cages, mesh frameworks, and improvised structures, sometimes referred to as cope cages, have been installed to disrupt drone attack angles. In one widely discussed case, Russian strategic bombers were seen covered with discarded tires as a crude protective measure. Later, reports suggested that some aircraft even had tire shapes painted onto them. This detail may sound farcical, but it reflects a broader truth. Visual distortion can interfere with automated recognition systems trained to identify standard silhouettes. Before going further, it's worth noting that discussions like this are part of the broader analysis regularly provided by outlets such as The Military Show, which focuses on geopolitics and defense technology. The contrast between lifelike decoys and crude camouflage highlights two distinct audiences on the battlefield: human operators and machine vision systems. Inflatable replicas primarily target the human eye. They exploit stress, urgency, and limited decision windows. If an operator cannot immediately confirm a target's authenticity, hesitation sets in. Camouflage and visual distortion, by contrast, aim to confuse algorithms. AI-enabled systems flag targets based on recognizable shapes and thermal signatures. Altering those signatures, or deliberately spoofing them, can cause automated systems either to misidentify decoys as genuine or to overlook real assets entirely. In both cases, the objective is the same: force the enemy to spend more time, money, and attention than the deception costs to create. This reflects a profound economic inversion in modern warfare. A precision interceptor missile may cost hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. An inflatable tank costs a fraction of that. When facing drones priced between $1,000 and $10,000, deploying million-dollar defensive solutions becomes financially unsustainable. This dynamic has motivated efforts in the United States and elsewhere to develop directed energy or microwave systems capable of disabling drones electronically. In theory, such systems could reduce per-engagement costs by relying on electricity rather than physical munitions, but many remain in testing phases, and large-scale deployment is still limited. Ukraine cannot wait for future breakthroughs. It requires immediate, scalable solutions built from accessible materials. Inflatable decoys meet that requirement. They are inexpensive, replaceable, and producible at scale. The economic logic cuts both ways. Ukraine and Russia are using drones offensively to strike deep into each other's territory. Drones are cheaper and easier to manufacture than traditional cruise missiles or aircraft. Without comprehensive high-tech defenses, infrastructure hundreds of miles from the front remains vulnerable. By late 2025, Ukrainian long-range drone strikes reportedly disrupted Russian fuel processing capacity, contributing to measurable declines in refining output. Given Russia's historical dependence on energy exports for a substantial share of government revenue, sustained disruption carries strategic consequences. At the same time, Russia has faced mounting manpower challenges. Independent analyses, including estimates from research organizations such as CSIS, have suggested that Russian casualties since 2022 have reached extraordinarily high levels. Training pipelines have struggled to replace losses, leading to expanded conscription policies in 2026. Territorial gains during 2025 were often incremental, measured in small villages or narrow stretches of land, reflecting the grinding nature of attritional warfare. Drone proliferation intensifies this reality. With semi-autonomous systems conducting much of the frontline engagement, the 800-mile front is in many places sparsely manned compared to earlier wars. Traditional armored platforms increasingly serve as high-value targets in a contest dominated by unmanned systems. Within this context, Ukraine's decoy strategy becomes more than clever theatrics. It forms part of a broader campaign of economic exhaustion. Every Russian missile fired at an inflatable replica is one less available for a genuine target. Every drone sortie directed at a dummy consumes operator time, fuel, and logistical support. The cumulative effect is subtle but powerful. Over months and years, repeated small inefficiencies compound into strategic strain. Ukraine has not prevailed through overwhelming industrial might. Instead, it has leveraged adaptability, rapid iteration, and external support to offset Russia's numerical advantages. What began as a war of massed formations has evolved into a contest of resource management and innovation cycles. This evolution raises fundamental questions about the future of warfare. Both sides are racing to integrate AI into targeting systems and autonomous swarms. Yet the enduring effectiveness of fishing nets, painted camouflage, and inflatable decoys demonstrates that low-cost countermeasures can blunt high-end technology. Autonomous systems rely on patterns and signatures. When those signatures are spoofed across a battlefield, expensive algorithms can be manipulated into attacking illusions. The result mirrors what is already visible: costly systems neutralized by inexpensive deception. Ukraine's experience suggests that technological superiority alone does not determine victory. The decisive factor may be the ability to combine innovation with affordability and speed. By the time an adversary recognizes the scale of the deception, resources have already been drained. Ammunition stocks have diminished. Operational tempo has slowed. strategic flexibility has narrowed. A century-old concept, updated with modern materials and integrated into distributed production networks, has become a persistent challenge for one of the world's largest militaries. If you're interested in how Ukraine continues to expand its drone production capacity, explore further analysis on that topic. And for ongoing coverage of the Russia-Ukraine conflict and broader geopolitical developments, follow the Military Show for regular updates.